Hello one, hello all, it is the most sorry for being late, ghost of them all, Caspa in the flesh, and it's time for a review of Andre 3000, Blue New Sun. Andre 3000, legendary Atlanta rapper, is back with a instrumental album, flute album if you will, but I wouldn't sell the guy short in terms of instrumentation. We don't sell Andre short here. Not at all. I am referring to, he is not only playing the flute on here, but he's also doing pedal steel guitar and contrabass, which shows his versatility on this record. Now, do I feel he's versatile enough? Well, let's go into the back catalog of Andre, of Outkast, and if you're living under a rock, why this is such a big deal. As I said before, legendary rapper with an amazing catalog, with Outkast being one half of Outkast, giving great album after great album, be it Aquemini, be it AT Aliens, or Speakerbox, The Love Below, which we will get into a little bit after I mention my personal favorite, Stankonia. So yeah, and due to Andre not doing so much rapping and more singing and more neo-soul and more funk on The Love Below, it was really no shock to me that he would try something different when he gave us this new solo album. Andre has always been a creative, a very thoughtful artist, a very expansive artist, someone who's not afraid to take risks. So, given that, I thought we were going to get more risk-taking on this album. And did we? Maybe not enough. But before we get into that, I do want to point out the speculation that went into this album. Once people heard the news that it was a flute album and not a rap album, a lot of people took it different ways. Some people respected the fact that Andre was trying something different and evolving, but in the midst of that, some people respected the fact Andre was trying new things, and they understood that he's not gonna rap forever. But the problem with that is the way Andre carried that, as in, if someone's old, or with him being older, he can't rap about other things. And Andre is such a innovative artist, I believe he can. But I digress. And then you had the other people who were infuriated that Andre was not rapping on this, on how it's been years since we've not only heard something from Andre, but as a full project, as a debut, they were upset that it was going to be a flute album. And honestly, my opinion was, it's not really that he's putting out a flute album, it's how well can he do a flute album? How well can he do a ambient, jazz, new age album? How well can he do that? And given how I am a fan of jazz, I'm a fan of flute, and due to Andre being in the headspace before to pull off something versatile, my hopes were pretty high. And now that I've heard the album, I could say this. My grievances aren't that it's not a hip-hop album. Not at all. I welcome that with open arms. For me, it's that I feel Andre held back on this one. I feel Andre didn't take advantage of this moment as much as I would have liked him to be. As adventurous and creative as Andre has been in the past, I didn't see a lot of this on this album. And sure, the tracks are long. The titles are long. But a lot of the tracks here just come off as just decent background music. And sometimes the effects used on Andre's flute could make it sound artificial, like on the opener. And also there are parts where Andre's playing is not exactly syncing well with the instrumentation. And I will admit the ambition is there with the duration of this album being over an hour. And through this time frame, I unfortunately don't get a lot of amazement from this album. I don't get anything as mind-bending as something Andre could have put together on here. It's not whimsical and wild like a Jethro Tull record. It's not as raw or passionate or in your face as a Roland Kirk record. And I will admit there are effects on this album on the flute that either mitigate or strengthen Andre's playing, especially in such an ambient landscape that this album provides, where a lot of the factors of attention, I feel, come from most of the production and not necessarily Andre playing all the time. And if I'm being honest, I think this album could have used more Andre. And with this being a freestyle album with just one take and that's it, I feel kind of a disservice here, especially how amateurish he sounds on some of these tracks. And the production, while I'm not in love with a lot of the production here, it definitely sounds more experienced than Andre on this. And that's not good. That is not good. And the following track, while I guess not terrible, there's not really much in terms of exciting layers or texture here. There are some enjoyable moments, but it just goes on way too long, and a majority of it just sounds like I'm waiting on a spacey game to load that never starts. But yeah, most of the track is pretty lethargic, and I actually had to battle sleep while actually listening to this numerous times. And the third track, that night in Hawaii when I turned into a panther and started making these low register purring tones that I couldn't control, shit was wild. And with a track of this title, I expect it to be, I don't know, out of control, very jazzy, very hot, very, I guess, tension building. But no, it just sounds like a very stiff piece of an RPG game where you're just walking around in this tribal village trying to get information and nothing exciting happens. But yeah, I just didn't get much excitement out of that track like I should have. It just doesn't come off, again, as raw to me. There is a stiffness there. There is almost something of an electronic feel there, and not in a good way. The following track, though, is definitely a highlight for me with the sci-fi twinkling keys, with an ascending arpeggio like something out of Laurie Anderson's Big Science. And I think Andre's incorporation of the flute complemented it very well. And I love the woozy passages thrown in here, giving the track such an intoxicating feel. And there's moments that sound very spacious, very cavernous, probably the most cavernous on this record, with some tasteful incorporations of the rain stick. Yes, the rain stick. The rain stick makes an appearance on this album. And the coalescing of Andre's stuttering flute with these weeping synths are just so gorgeous. Like, I wish we had more of this, because Andre and the production definitely sounds like they're more in their bag here. Also, Ghandi, Dalai Lama, Your Lord and Savior, Gacy, Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and John Wayne Gacy. Yes, he put those all in one title, which is definitely a wild title, but given how I have listened to this, and which is certainly a wild title, yes, but given how I've paid attention to the sonic quality and sequencing of this track, it definitely makes sense. With how bright and hypnotic and almost spiritual the beginning of this track sounds, and then just goes into sonically dark territory. And I love the hypnotic and cycling flute playing from Andre over this vibrant bass and these galactic keys, as it expands through the track with the inclusion of these somber to haunting piano notes, with these ghostly backing vocals and shattering cymbals. Like, it sounds like the shatter of the cymbal is expanding across the track. It's very bizarre, and also bizarre and intriguing to me are these vocals, probably the only vocals on the whole album, and how beautiful and harrowing they sound, giving the track a very haunting, uneasy feel. And there are moments on this album where the album does start to paint itself into a corner, and yes, I'm talking about Ants to You, which leads for a very boring and tedious track that you've brought forth that just comes off as a really boring and tedious track as you're just trying to recreate the magic and the highlights that you had on this album. And there's the closer on this album, which is also the longest track on this album. And honestly, the best closer to this album. That has these psychedelic, watery guitars with these dreamy, I believe to be vibraphones. If so, hell yeah. And Andre's playing along the strumming creates such a serene, beautiful essence to the track. And the droning atmospheric tones against the distant cymbals. And with the track correlating to dreams and how much of this sounds like a dream sequence and kind of a fantasy and a mental trip, I feel this album does close off well, and the instrumentation certainly complements it. The only problem is we don't get enough of that on this album. We don't get like enough risks on this album. We don't get much danger. I would say for flute, ambient, jazz, what it's going for, it goes there and it stays there most of the time. So I would say it's pretty safe for instrumental standards. And with this supposed to be a experimental and freestyle album, I don't think Andre took advantage of that freestyle enough. So I will say this, I think this album is overrated, but also overhated. I feel with the praise here, as a meditative album you could relax to, you could go to sleep to, I guess. For me, I was hoping for an album experience where Andre shows his full potential on embarking on another journey. But perhaps we'll get that on the next album. Because here, I did enjoy this, but not as much as most people, unfortunately. And I didn't hate this as much as most people either. So yeah, with that being said, I'm feeling a 3 out of 5 black hearts on this album. Yeah. But if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And that's it. Caspa, Gothic Ghost. Subscribe to your host. Till we meet again.